That's a great question. There's almost 300 that will be conducted over the 6-month mission.
Okay, let's see that again, because didn't he just, well, you can decide for yourself. What exactly is going on here? Let's watch again. All right, maybe we need to hear the sound again. Hear the sound again? Not sure. What is he doing?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I kind of thought it was an important question myself, and I was trying to think of what else could I be seeing here. And I've seen nasal sprays. They usually have like a trigger, like this, or they're obviously nasal spray bottles like this. But then I thought, wait a second, there's no germs on the ISS. They say people don't get sick there. They make sure that you're not sick when you go up. He'd been up there for quite a while, therefore there shouldn't be any germs up there. So why does he have allergies on the space station? Can't be allergies. And that stick looked kind of like, yeah, like a tutor. Now let's see what happened just less than a minute later. This is less than a minute after that little snort job.
Mission control, as well as designing the next generation of vehicles and equipment that we need in order to explore further. Over.
Hey, you want to get an 8-ball? It makes faking space a lot easier. All right, I'll get one.
And, well, we spend a lot of time taking pictures, playing with our food is nice, calling people on Earth and keeping in contact with our friends and family.
I think the glasses, when they get back from space, make a little bit more sense now. Don't you? And also, this answer takes on new meaning.
Well, we are doing everything we can to make life better on Earth, but with developing new drugs, life better on Earth, but with developing new drugs, finding ways to, you name it, we are trying. Everything we do here is either to make life better on the planet or to enable us to explore. Over.
Another interesting answer here is exactly how he got involved in space. Listen carefully. This is something I never knew and something that needs to be investigated.
I visited my grandpa who worked at Johnson Space Center when I was 6, and I saw the huge Saturn V and just thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen, and I wanted to know more, and then I just got hooked from that moment on. Huge Saturn V and just thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen, and I wanted to know more, and then I just got hooked from that moment on, and I never looked back. Over.
Very interesting. Old Grandpa worked at Johnson, huh? I wonder if he liked Pepsi, or did he prefer Coke? Just wondering.
And I missed that last one. Could you say again?
So, I mean, it could have been anything, really. I mean, Jeff probably has allergies from all that pollen. That's my guess. I mean, he's clearly just an honest military man. He's got manners. I mean, that's why he ducks. He checks the monitor, and then he ducks out of the way of the camera before he sniffs his Afrin. Makes all the sense in the world. Don't know about you guys. I don't think there's anything to worry about. I'm sure the $53 million a day is going to, better humanity.
We did go there, and we did go there, and I think that's it.
Right in the middle.
Mark.
Oh no, it's going down.
Well, Mark. You got like 3 feet of air that time.
Is that a plane or is it the rocket? That's bad. What goes up must come down. Is that what always happens? Does it always go right down?
Yep.
It looks bad to me. It's in space. Or is that it?
Yep, I think that's it.
Is that what always happens? Does it always go right down?
Yep.
It looks bad to me. Is that what always happens? Does it always go right down?
Yep.
It looks bad to me.
Mark.
Oh no, it's going down! It's going down!
looks so ridiculous and impossible. And you can tell it's real because it looks so fake, honestly. Like, we'd have way better CGI if it was fake. And, you know, the colors all look kind of weird in space. There's no atmospheric occlusion. You know, like, everything looks too crisp. But we didn't really test any of those materials for, you know, is it space hardened or whatever, you know? So it just has the same seats that like a normal car has. It's just literally a normal car in space.
NASA's next spacecraft, already being built and tested across America, will do those things and more.
This is the spacecraft that's going to take humans to explore the solar system. It's the next big step for NASA in exploration.
Called the Orion Multipurpose Crew Vehicle, or MPCV, this next-generation spacecraft will enable America to explore beyond low Earth orbit. 2.
As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
3.
Plan that NASA has is to build a rocket called SLS, which is a heavy lift rocket. It's something that is much bigger than what we have today, and it will be able to launch the Orion capsule with humans on board, as well as landers or other components to destinations beyond Earth orbit. Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go, and this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
4.
The kinds of technologies that we're testing out on Space Station are definitely helping us with our goals of going beyond low Earth orbit. So we have a really robust exploration program at NASA.
5.
And unlike the previous program, we are setting a course with specific and achievable milestones. Early in the next decade, a set of crewed flights will test and prove the systems required for exploration beyond low Earth orbit.
So how did we send humans to the moon 6 times so early on, but we can't figure it out in 2016? How was it so easy to go to the moon in 1969 using this flimsy lunar module?
Stage push. Engine arm is out. Okay, I'm going to get the pro. 99, proceeded. 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Right away, Houston. Vents are good. Ag side.
Just wondering.
In school, I was just like you, probably all of you there. I tried my best. I didn't always succeed, didn't always do well, but I put my best effort into school. Math and science were kind of my favorite subject. I didn't really like English and reading too much, but I've since grown out of that, and I enjoy reading now. And I played a lot of sports. And all of that happened in a little town called York, Maine, across the United States from where we're talking to you right now. Hello, my name is Steve Owen. I'm a teacher here at Riverside Prep. York, Maine, across the United States from where we're talking to you right now.
Do a somersault right now.
a close-up view of the equatorial region of Saturn. I think it's very interesting, and it caused quite a bit of comment here in the Mission Operations Center. First of all, the block in the upper right has no meaning. That's an artifact introduced into the image as we display it here by the computers that process this spacecraft data as it comes from the spacecraft. So the part we're interested in is the portion below the middle of the screen, the lower half of the screen. And what we're seeing there is a portion of the cloud tops of Saturn near the equator, and the stripes that we see to the left that move diagonally from the left up toward the upper center are a backlighted view of Saturn's rings. But the most interesting thing, perhaps, is the shadow these rings cast on the surface of the cloud tops of Saturn. Time is 9:03 and 40 seconds. Right now, 20 more seconds, and we will be able to confirm the spacecraft has survived. 15 seconds. 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have a mission. The Pioneer Saturn spacecraft has survived.
Nicholas, I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
At some point in the future, we're going to look back and say, how did we do it without space? The future of American space leadership, we're going to lead again. It's been a long time. It's over 25 years. Today, we're taking a crucial step to secure America's future in space by reviving the National Space Council after it has been dormant almost 25 years, if you can believe it. Today's announcement sends a clear signal to the world that we are restoring America's proud legacy of leadership in space.
Until this hour, for who would realize that the unthinkable was not only possible, but absolutely true? To the moon, they never took a photographic telescope. Had they done so, they would have been able to see farther into the universe than had ever before been realized. If they had taken a telescope and were not actually on the moon, they would have had to concoct undiscovered galaxies that might one day prove to be non-existent. The cost of the 3 moon rovers in 21st century currency? Nearly $60 million each, though they had fewer parts than a Jeep. Where was all this money going? Then there's the flag, blowing in the wind, at least twice, on the atmosphereless moon. We can only guess that most of the missions were staged inside for fear of possible aerial or satellite reconnaissance from an unfriendly nation. The backpacks, designed for 1/6 gravity, must have had the cooling systems removed to allow for movement without falling over. With very near and hot studio lighting, that left one hot astronaut inside. Assuming that it was the astronauts inside, after all, their faces were always covered. The necessary mammoth amounts of air conditioning were probably responsible for the air current. Here the editor cuts to a still shot of the flag, just as the effect becomes noticeable. Here it is unchecked. This rare clip, attained decades ago, was never re-released with the inevitable increase in experience and scrutiny. To demonstrate 1/6 gravity, a bouncy, floaty feel to the astronauts' movements would be similarly achieved with relative simplicity. Slow motion. You are viewing the scenes as they aired more than 30 years ago. Now let's look at them with the speed doubled. It becomes discernible that they are, in fact, in Earth's gravity, and are no more leaving the ground than they would on Earth. It is clear from these rarely seen color television pictures that the crew of Apollo 11 brought a high-resolution color video camera with them on their mission. Yet the only pictures broadcast live from the moon's surface were these from a low-definition black and white camera. In fact, the networks complained because in addition to this, they were forced to shoot the images, second generation, off of a projection TV of the technology of 30 years ago, and were not even allowed to take a direct feed, which further degraded the quality and clarity of the images. Perhaps this was precisely what NASA and the federal government had in mind. After all, it was a first, regardless of where they were. Better to open up their debut mission with fuzzy pictures and numerous blackouts, rather than show too much revealing detail of a false scene that was yet unproven. And finally, the element that seals their fate. Of all the footage of Apollo 11 requested from NASA over a 5-year period, one gem was discovered just before the completion of this documentary. An old reel received by mistake. It contains the raw or unedited footage of the crew of Apollo 11, Michael Collins, Edwin Aldrin Jr., and Neil Armstrong, staging part of their mission for nearly an hour in living color, with exceptionally clear behind-the-scenes audio of conversations discussing the techniques used to achieve a disingenuous picture depicting the Earth at a distance, in order to falsely demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. It cannot be misconstrued that this staging was done for some other reason prior to the mission, for the reel itself is slated and dated July 18th, 19th, and 20th, 1969, the very days of the mission when they were said to be approaching and achieving lunar orbit. Furthermore, it is apparent they are in genuine zero gravity aboard the actual spacecraft, necessary to convince the mass media of their authenticity, just not any further than Earth orbit, as you will see. In this never-before-seen or heard footage, not only is the radio conversation between the astronauts and Houston Control audible, there is a secondary, private conversation taking place between the crew and a third confidential party, prompting the astronauts with what to say, when to speak, and how to effectively manipulate the camera to achieve the desired misleading effect. NASA claims that the Houston transmissions were the only ones taking place with the astronauts. Listen now as Houston Control initiates a conversation with the crew, only to find them too preoccupied with the behind-the-scenes trickery to respond. Moments pass, and the oversight is picked up on by the clandestine third party, who quickly prompts them with talk. Immediately, Neil Armstrong speaks.
Call Apollo 11. Houston, Goldstone says that the TV looks great. Over. Okay, roger for
Again, the illusion they are attempting to create is the Earth at a distance to demonstrate their far journey from it and their ability to survive passing through the Van Allen radiation belts. Understand, too, that only about 20 seconds of this raw footage was ever broadcast to the public, and these conversations discussing their deception were believed to be private. Until now. Here they discuss that these television transmissions were in fact not broadcast live as everyone believed. They were first screened and edited for playback later.
Roger, Neil. We just wanted a narrative such that we can, when we get the playback, we can sort of correlate what we were saying. Thank you very much.
Here they discuss the fact that they have turned out the lights and have blocked out sunlight from entering the spacecraft through the other windows, as to not cause any reflected light to fall onto the spacecraft's wall in the foreground.
Okay, very good. Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through the number one window, and there isn't any reflected light.
The reason this was done is so that the truth of the matter would not be revealed. It is this. Though the federal government would have you believe that this is a view of Earth from a distance out of the spacecraft's window as it nears the moon, it is not. What they have ingeniously done is placed the camera at the back of the spacecraft and centered the lens on a circular window in the foreground, outside of which it is completely filled with the Earth in low orbit. The circumference of the window then appears to be the diameter of the Earth at a distance, with the darkened walls of the spacecraft appearing to be the blackness of space around it. That is why they wanted the interior dark and blocked out the sun from entering through the other windows. Here you can see the extruded window, probably 2 inches thick at the bottom. This is because the Earth's shine is coming in at a downward angle. It also causes the Earth to appear to be an irregularly shaped circle, for you are seeing the outside of the window at the bottom and the inside of the window at the top, which together form 2 different sized halves of a circle. Subsequently, this take was never used. As they perfected the shot, a crescent-shaped piece of black material was inset slightly into the window to create the illusion of the Earth's terminator line dividing night and day. It is uncannily convincing. During this segment, intended to be edited and played back later for the worldwide television audience, dated July 18th, 1969, Neil Armstrong condemns himself as he states that he is 130,000 miles out, or halfway to the moon, as the NASA flight log also states on this date, when he is in reality in low Earth orbit of a few hundred miles.
Roger, Houston, Apollo 11. Calling in from about 130,000 miles out.
Here, during another segment, also intended to air after review, Neil Armstrong falsely explains to the viewers how the shot is attained by putting the camera's lens to the window's glass, as it would have to be if they were the claimed distance away from the Earth.
We only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera.
If the window was completely filled up with a TV camera, as he stated, then an astronaut's arm would not be able to get between the camera and the window, as it obviously does here in this outtake.
South America becomes invisible just off beyond the Terminator or inside the shadow.
You can also notice how the astronaut operating the camera reacted to the mistake by attempting to pan away from it.
Blue gas. See white bands of major cloud formations across the Earth. And
This is a segment that they believed wasn't even being recorded, much less suitable for broadcast, for the lens was being zoomed out and the scene was being changed to that of an interior of the astronauts at work, and apparently the stop button popped back up on the recorder without notice. Here is the diffused work light that they used to see camera controls, but not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Here they remove part of the crescent insert. Finally, the iris is opened up, and you can see the real location of the camera and the very bright and near Earth out the window. Here is the slate for the 19th of July, and the same shot of trickery on the 19th of July, and then the 20th, and the same misleading shot on the 20th. Later that evening, they were said to be walking on the moon. How can this be when they were in Earth orbit only 9 hours earlier, and the moon is some 3 days' journey away? Furthermore, if they genuinely went to the moon, why would they be faking any part of it? Why this trickery with the window? By faking being halfway to the moon, it becomes apparent that they did so because they could not even go halfway. It thus confirms that the stumbling block to their success was the lethal radiation of the Van Allen radiation belts. Since the same equipment was used on the subsequent missions in the 40 months that followed, none of them could have gone to the moon. They only increased their proficiency at staging them.
Tommy, do you have Neil Armstrong interviewed already?
No, he doesn't want to be interviewed.
Well, I know.
Why does he not give interviews?
Well, because that's his personal choice. And I guess it's mine, in a way, to do things when they've been researched and worked out as far as a business arrangement. This is not news. This is not an anniversary.
Well, actually, it is. We found a very unique reel of footage that we have queued up to show you.
Yeah.
And it's from the mission. And to our knowledge, no one has ever seen it before. And it's 30 years old.
And you want me to see this while you have me on camera?
Well, and to tell us what it is. I mean, it's...
Well, I don't know why I should do that.
It's a very unique footage.
It may be that I need to see it, and then we sit down and we talk about what you're taking a picture of. I don't see where there's an advantage in it for me to do what you're asking me to do. I see all sorts of pitfalls. I see people who have managed to talk to somebody. Who did you talk to in our office?
I talked with Heather at Tor Books.
Yeah, but is this helping book promotion? Are you going to be putting anything out during the time that I'm marketing books? See, Heather does not represent me for the things you're talking about. She represents a book selling activity.
I think when you see the footage, you'll see that it's very extraordinary, one of a kind, behind the scenes type of footage.
Yeah. Well, if it is, why do you have access to something that no one else has seen before?
Serendipity, I guess. And it was recorded on the 18th
of what?
Of July, 1969. Do you remember this?
The 18th?
Apollo 11, Houston, Goldstone says that the TV looks great. Over. Okay, Roger, Roger, Neil, we just wanted a narrative such that we can, when we get the playback, we can sort of correlate what we're seeing. Thank you very much. Well, we shut out the sun coming in some of the other windows into the spacecraft, so it's looking through the number one window, and there isn't any reflected light. And we only have one window that has a view of the Earth, and it's filled up with the TV camera. South America becomes invisible just off beyond the Terminator or inside the shadow. We can see the oceans with a definite blue cast. See white bands of major cloud formations across the Earth. Roger, the ATC is working real well. The F-22 looks good, over. Hello, Apollo 11, Houston, did you copy, over? We copied, Charlie. Roger, your transmissions the last couple of times have been about 2 by, over. Okay, how do you read me now? Right, you're 5 by now. Now we're coming in. Can't quite make out who that had.
What is your proposition that we didn't go to the moon?
I know for a fact that you did. I know for a fact that you did not.
You know for a fact that we did not.
That's correct, and you'll see this tape proves that.
Okay, well, I'm not interested in satisfying your suppositions when there's all this evidence that we did.
This proves, as you see, that you were using the window to demonstrate that you were halfway to the moon when you were
Turn the camera off
off, please. Turn the camera off.
It shows that you're in Earth orbit. Now, if the moon is 3 days away, and this is late, on the 18th, how could you possibly walk on the moon 2 days later when this was shot on the 18th?
You want me to sit in front of a camera while you're taking pictures, you're showing this, and then you want to see my reaction?
I know for a fact
That's slimy journalism. Do you realize that?
If
You ought to be ashamed of
you read
yourself.
the document that I have in here, you'll find that it's not. That this is a personal plea to do what is right.
Well, we sit and we talk about things ahead of
This is
time.
the document that you want to see. I know for a fact.
But what it is you're trying to do is unethical. You don't believe that?
No, I do not.
Well, then we have a difference of opinion.
This is where you're using the window of the spacecraft to appear to be the Earth far away. We got the raw footage of it. We have an auxiliary track, someone prompting you with the speed.
You believe in UFOs?
No,
You believe we've been visited by... Well, why do
No,
you
I
want to
don't.
believe this?
I know for a fact. We've had this analyzed, and this is the window, and you're in a stated by an atomic clock at the Goldstone tracking station, which is on the tape.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator in NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight. We're not...
I know for a fact this didn't happen, and this tape would prove it in a court of law. It would.
Why don't you try? Why don't you put your money into a court of law and see how people laugh at you? You want it...
No one has
Is your
laughed.
camera working?
No one has laughed.
And this makes you the real famous person that has discovered this and reveals all this stuff. What an ego you must have to want to propel yourself like this.
That's not why I'm doing it, and God knows that's not why I'm doing it. I'm doing it for the truth to come out because I think it was wrong.
You can also notice how the
No,
astronaut...
but you're doing it the wrong way. You don't mislead somebody like me to come in here.
If you didn't go to the moon, that's misleading people. I'm showing you
Okay,
this tape.
we went to the moon. We're not misleading anybody.
Then how is it possible that this is the window? It's shot to make it look like...
Look, you can manufacture all you want with
This is
these
straight.
things.
This isn't manufactured.
Sure.
You know that it isn't.
that of an interior of the astronauts at work.
I believe this would prove it in a court of law that you did not go to the moon. It's dated on the 18th. It proves when you remove the...
You give me your business card.
It's all in there. It's all in there.
Not throw light onto the spacecraft's wall. Here they remove part of the crescent insert.
This proves that it's the window. You can see them removing the crescent insert that you did to create the Terminator line in front of
You're
the
so
window.
full of shit, I can't believe it. If you show this publicly, you're open for a lawsuit. Okay?
Any ill effects from the Van Allen radiation belts?
No, now I'm not sure we went far enough out to encounter the Van Allen radiation belt. Maybe we did.
Beginning at an altitude of 1,000 miles and extending an additional 25,000 miles, lay lethal bands of radiation called the Van Allen radiation belts. Every space mission in history with humans on board, from both the United States and Soviet Union, from the first in 1961 to the present, has been well below this deadly radiation field. Mercury, Gemini, Soyuz, Skylab, the Space Shuttle, all maintained altitudes well below 1,000 miles. All except Apollo.
I don't know the distance to the Van Allen radiation belt, and if we did, it wasn't a problem. If we were going to encounter it, then we would have had to build the spacecraft and the spacesuit to not give humans a problem. You don't just build something and hope it works. You study to see what the threats are, the environment is, and then you say, how thick do I have to make the metal on the spacecraft so that going through this kind of radiation or these kind of meteoroids, it won't get hurt. And so then we build it that way.
The belts are 1,000 miles to 25,000 miles above the Earth.
Then we went right out through them.
No effects on your cells?
We didn't even know it. I don't think anybody, well, maybe somebody said you went through the radiation belt, but we didn't feel it inside, and we didn't get any, added radiation.
In 1998, the Space Shuttle flew to an altitude of 350 miles, one of its highest altitudes ever, hundreds of miles below the beginning of a field of radiation that was so severe that the astronauts inside of their shielded spacecraft and inside of their shielded spacesuits saw flashes of light with their eyes shut that they described as shooting stars, due to radiation penetrating first the shuttle's shielding, then their spacesuit shielding, then their skulls, and finally the retinas of their closed eyes. As a result, CNN issued the following report, noting NASA's unpredicted surprise. The radiation belt surrounding Earth may be more dangerous for spacewalking astronauts than previously believed. Scientists say the phenomena known as the Van Allen belts can spawn killer electrons when the Earth's magnetic field changes. These electrons that are being studied could have an important effect, not only on satellites, which has happened in the past, but could also affect the astronauts by creating large doses of radiation that could influence their health. The electrons can penetrate through various materials, including spacesuits, and can pass through, in fact, the walls of the space station, and can create high charges deep inside of these objects.
No strange occurrences.
Nothing like that.
The space shuttle.
Go ahead.
The space shuttle went to 365 miles a few years ago. Because I worked in news, I saw CNN. They said that the radiation belts surrounding Earth are more dangerous than previously believed because the astronauts saw shooting stars with their eyes closed. Just when they got within 600.
Radiation belt. We saw shooting stars, but they're not shooting stars from with your eyes closed, although they look like it. If you're out in space beyond the Van Allen belt, and probably within the Van Allen belt, and close your eyes, and just pay attention. You don't notice it unless you pay attention. Then all of a sudden you'll see a little flash like a shooting star, except it's like that. There goes one this way. Then one just blossoms. And then not that fast. Maybe you wait 3 minutes or 2 minutes and one goes whoosh. And what's happening is cosmic rays are hitting the back of your eye and exciting those sensors in the back of your eye. So that's what you see. And they got high enough apparently to close it. My guess is in Earth orbit, if you closed your eyes and just paid attention, that you would see them.
The first time they were seen was when they went to 365 miles.
Yes.
That's 650 miles below or away from the radiation.
Yeah, see, it's below. My guess if they just did it tonight. But see, if you're just going to sleep or closing your eyes or it's dark, you don't notice them. But if you'll close your eyes and pay attention, which we had an experiment to do, by the way, then you see them whistling by. Not on our mission, by the way, they hadn't been discovered yet.
And some people have suggested that it hit a dome that may be above us, but I thought at that velocity it would have been destroyed. So I didn't think much of it when I originally watched it, but I have to thank a guy named Jeff who just sent it to me again, because it really put some pieces together for what I was working on with this. And when you watch the video, the rocket just stops. And so I started looking up the stats. That rocket went over 3,500 miles per hour on that trip. Now, it might not have been going that fast when it stopped, but it was going a few thousand miles per hour at least, and all that energy just suddenly, where did it go? Rockets don't have brakes. It literally stops, and I mean, the rotation keeps going a little bit, but all of that angular momentum from the rotation of the rocket and the linear momentum from flying up just stopped. No, it had to have hit something. But what did it hit? If it hit a solid surface, the rocket would have been destroyed, and most likely the camera too, so we wouldn't have the footage, and obviously that's not the case. So when you start watching it, around that time, around a minute in, a few seconds later, the two stages separate. It's a two-stage rocket, it looks like, and you watch the bottom half of the rocket start to fall down, as you would expect. But then the upper half, the way the camera's mounted to it, starts spinning around, and very slowly it starts to fall back towards Earth. Very slowly. And you might think, well, I have it up here, the Go Fast rocket got up to about 117 kilometers. And outer space is considered in the thermal layer. Once you cross into the thermal layers, technically you're in outer space. But what doesn't make sense is, just because you fly vertically into outer space doesn't mean that you're just going to float there. That's not how it works, based on the heliocentric model. If you watch Falls Out Physics Episode 3, I talked about how you have to have an orbital velocity, and these orbital velocities are incredibly fast. You have to be orbiting the Earth to resist the force pulling down on you, gravity, weight, whatever you want to call it, that pulls down on you. You have to do that. You have to do, basically, this string is gravity. Just to show this again, if you haven't seen that, you have to be moving at a high velocity to resist that force. That rocket went straight up, so it should have fallen straight back down. Now, just to see what the acceleration on that rocket should be, assuming very thin, almost no air up here, because that's what's supposed to be there, I did a calculation at 117 kilometers plus the radius of the Earth, and I found that the acceleration towards Earth, due to gravity, if you want to call it that, or due to weight, should be roughly 9.46 meters per second squared. That's not much. That rate is pretty close to the rate at sea level, which is 9.81 meters per second squared. So it should have basically done this, but it didn't. It stops, and then it just kind of slowly starts sinking, like it's in water or some type of liquid.